Myles, if you keep reading that, it just says that I'm old, okay, and that I can't hold a regular job.
I don't know. It says that you're a heck of a guy in my eyes. But welcome to the show. And, of course, you've never gotten the Myles on Motorsports treatment. But, Jack, how'd you catch the racing bug?
It was kind of distended, but, you know, they always talk about baseball, you know, it's handed down from generation to generation. And same thing with auto racing. My dad and his two best buddies right after the war started racing midgets, of all things. They had a Ford Flathead that George Flemke drove, and then they built some modifieds and raced at Riverside Park, and then moved up the ladder into NASCAR. And I figured if I was going to be, as the oldest of 7 kids, get the apple of my daddy's eye, that maybe I ought to follow in his footsteps. And so that's basically how I got bit by the bug. And to his passing, we shared, unlike the other 6 kids, we shared a passion for open wheel, for USAC, for NEMA, and most of all for the Indianapolis 500. I went to 51 consecutive Indy 500s. I missed this year for the first time.
What is your favorite Indianapolis Motor Speedway memory of all those races you got to go to?
Well, I think the first one would be the first one I went, 1969. And quite honestly, it was because I'd been listening to it, you know, with Sid Collins and the IMS network for years. And when I got there, all those word pictures that Sid and Freddie Agabation and the rest of the turn announcers, you know, described the place. I walked in and I go, wow, yeah, it's exactly like they described it. And then it was a great race. If you remember, that was Mario Andretti winning in 69 in Bronner Hawk because he had burned up in practice in his Lotus. And so I remember coming down the steps of my dad and his 2 friends, the Garuti brothers, and my dad saying, well, Jackie, you just watched history in the making. You know, that kid Mario is going to win a bunch of these Indy 500s. I think it's the only time in my dad's 78 years that he was wrong.
Did it rub you the wrong way when NASCAR went to Indianapolis in the 90s? Because I know, no, it didn't.
Not at all. No, not at all. Because, and again, thank heavens when that happened, we didn't have the internet, okay? Because, yes, there were people that were divided and everything. Look, you can't just be a NASCAR fan. Kyle Larson has shown us the way. If you enjoy racing, you should not restrict yourself, nor should you be so xenophobic that you don't want other people. Nobody's going to supplant the Indianapolis 500. It's always going to be at the end of the month of May. It's an iconic event. You don't run it 106 times. And so when NASCAR went there, I thought it was wonderful that they all got a taste of what, well, hell, I've enjoyed since 1969.
Jack, you went to Motor Racing Network in 72, and I know a name that is synonymous. I believe I remember the story from just last year at Legends Day up outside of Loudon there. But talk to us a little bit about joining MRN and working with Mike Joy.
Well, it was funny. Mike Joy followed me. I went down at the behest of Ken Squire and Roger Bear, and the 3 of us were really the pioneers when we first founded the Motor Racing Network. And then, just because this is what we do as New Englanders, when I moved into an executive producer's role, I hired Mike to come down. So then Mike waited in the wings, and when I left to go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, well, Mike stepped in as the executive producer and co-host. So it seems like Mike and I have been in pattern with each other right from the beginning, even when we used to announce together along with Bill Welch up at Stafford.
Hey, Jack, when you worked the pits and you were covering it for the various networks, what was your favorite racing to cover? Was it Indy, or was it stock cars, or was it something else?
You know, Paul, it's to me, and this is a lost art in today's television, is I always enjoyed the stories. I made my living for 50-plus years as a storyteller. So it really didn't matter to me. Now, naturally, my affinity was for the Indy 500 because that's where my heart lied. You know, I just really, you know, fell in love with it because my dad was in love with it. But I just, what was great is I used to have to pinch myself. I got to know these guys and these women and all of the people. And there were times when I would sit there and I'd think, you know what? I'm the luckiest damn guy in the world because I know these as people, not as heroes, not as the guy that won the Indy 500, sharing those moments with those, both the good moments and the bad moments. That's something I'll treasure forever.
So, of course, your name is synonymous with the Stafford Speedway, as we talked about in the intro. But let's talk a little bit about Stafford. And, you know, a couple of years back, a lot of upgrades went on at Stafford. Talk to us about things going on at the Speedway down in Connecticut.
Well, when my dad passed away, none of us were really certain what was going to lie ahead. And thank heavens for my younger brother, Mark, his wife, Lisa, and the two boys, Paul and David. You know, they took over the Speedway. I was long gone, okay? And you know, what they did is, and people don't realize this, they didn't just take money off the top and go live in big houses. To this day, they work there 6-7 days a week, even in the winter, and they have pumped any profits that they have back into the track. Tell me another racetrack that runs on a weekly operation outside of an IRP, but they're not even weekly, that invests hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep the drivers safe by introducing the safer barrier. How about a big, giant LED screen? I'll tell you the offset. You'll like this, Gally. One of the things that happened is now when a guy tries to park someone or hook them in the rear going down the backstretch before, you know, maybe race control couldn't see it that well. Now it's up there in wide living color, as they say. So there's a lot less shenanigans going on because even Ray Charles can see when you decide to park somebody.
I think I would look good on that screen, just so you know.
Oh, well, listen, you look good anywhere.
Thanks.
Okay?
So, speaking of Paul and speaking of you, we had a fun little time down at Seekonk this past Saturday night for the Boston Louis. And, of course, you were working the mic with Pete Falcone. Talk to us a little bit about the day that was for you on Saturday.
Look, again, I have an abiding passion for midgets. I've raced midgets, or attempted to. I shouldn't say raced. I was a field filler. But, you know, I did pretty well on dirt with mini sprints and with midgets and indoors. But for me, it's always been a passion, and I got to know the Seymour family very intimately. So I've been part of their memorial to their dad and to their grandfather. And I will say, I thought that this past weekend, this Boston Louis was filled with all sorts of, again, great stories. And it started with the youngster Zach Martinez, who I didn't realize until I talked to him afterwards. He races every Friday night in a Legends car at Seekonk. A little home cooking there. What do you think?
Absolutely.
And it was great because when we came down, he was shouting something, and none of us were really sure, like, was his seat on fire or what? And what he wanted the checkered flag, because he told me afterwards, he said, I just always dreamed if I won here, I wanted to take a circuit around waving the checkered flag. Then you get to and you know, you can sit there and you can be a critic and say a small field for the Boston Louis, but it was a quality field. And I think, Paul, you can attest to this. Avery Storr just opened a can of whoop ass on everybody.
Yeah, he was great that night. There was nothing you can say about it.
But the point is, the fans loved it, not only for the compelling feel-good stories, but there was hellacious competition in both of them. You know, just the saga of John Zick. Moved, I believe he lives in Arkansas now.
Yep.
And he and his dad, you know, put the midget in the barn, and he said, I came home specifically to run in this race. It was the first time that he had twisted the steering wheel since the Boston Louis last year, and he comes home in second spot. And, you know, Joey Bailey's performance. And then, of course, I see this guy, Scally. to number 30, finished in 5th. What I want to know is what happened. Were you sleeping on the start or what, man?
Yeah, Jack, I just wasn't quite right. And once I get momentum, I could do better. But
yeah,
I never really had it.
Well, there's other days that you do dangerous,
Yep.
so things are
Yep.
yeah.
Midget seemed to be an ultimate passion of yours, Jack. Have you ever been to the Chili Bowl, or do you have memories of the Chili Bowl that stick out to you?
I've been to the Chili Bowl. I'm proud to say I raced in the Fort Wayne USAC indoor races for a couple of years. I went. You guys will get a kick out of this. USAC decided to run a midget race in Columbus, Ohio, and so I ran that race, and it was a 50-lap main event. And you know, indoors you're gonna run 4 laps, and somebody's gonna spin, and then you get to take a breather. This sucker went 27 laps.
Wow.
Green flag. My arms are asleep. I'm hung over on the steering wheel. I'm laying down in the car. Well, the caution came out because I took my in-car radio and I threw it on the track.
Create your own luck, I guess, huh?
I could create my own caution. I needed a break.
Did they even have power steering then? Because I know a lot of times we didn't have it before
no.
too. Yeah, so your arms were dead.
Oh, it's just. But for me, one of the great things is I've been around racing as an announcer, journalist, was a flagman. I've had all kinds of jobs. But once I didn't start racing until I was 55. And when that happened, I get such a different appreciation for what the real true athletes, the real good drivers do week in and week out, whether it's Indy or Laguna Seca or Iowa this weekend for NASCAR. And it's like you can talk about the physical, but it's the mental side. I mean, you have to be, when we use the term elbows up, you have to be on the top of your game. And especially in a midget, the horsepower to weight ratio, you're riding a pocket rocket. Top of that, you don't have a mirror. You don't have anybody spotting for you saying, outside clear. What you do have is you have your ears, unless you're half deaf. So you begin to know, and you can sense in a sixth sense, somebody's coming up on the inside or the outside of you. For me, I just think it's a great athletic endeavor, and I think people that sit in front of the TV and watch it, or even folks in the stands at Seekonk, I don't think they can really appreciate just how much goes into deciding to go out there and put it on the line, especially short track. I told people this before. Would you want to go and, let's say you're going to go race and you're going to put your reputation and your abilities on the line in front of your friends and neighbors? If you're successful, that's great. But if you're not, you're going to go home to those friends and neighbors, and all they're going to do for several weeks is, well, what happened? That takes a big step to be able to just be fearless enough to go out and do that week in and week out.
I like the guys who simply just say, well, you should have just done better. I love that one.
Oh, isn't that great?
Why didn't you just step on the gas a little more? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I wish I did.
I'll tell you a great one though. I had a crash at Stafford Speedway. It was the first crash I ever had in my 1200 mini sprint, and I went ass over tea kettle. And they come to me, and I'm like, I'm just trying to catch my breath. So the announcer comes over and says, Jack, what happened? And I busted out laughing. The guy thought I had a concussion. I said, I've asked that question millions of times. My answer finally is crystal clear. If I knew what happened, do you think I would have been in the accident?
Right, right.
You've had the opportunity to talk to dozens and dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of fantastic drivers over your career. Alex Palou is lighting the world on fire in IndyCar. Oh. Have you ever had any interactions with him? And if you haven't, what are your thoughts on the state of IndyCar currently?
Well, first of all, I still do. Tony Kanaan, my good friend, and I do a show on Sirius XM radio each and every Wednesday night called Brick by Brick. And I was probably one of the first Americans to interview Alex when he came over from Barcelona and settled in a little unfurnished apartment in Austin, Texas, when he was trying to hook up with Dale Coyne. Let me tell you something. what he is accomplishing this year. TK and I were talking about it, in fact, on this show earlier. It's not a once in a decade moment. It's not a once in a quarter century moment. This hasn't been done for over 50 years in IndyCar racing. And it's not quite perfection, but it's pretty damn close.
What are you doing right now? Are you at the racetrack week to week, or at a racetrack? What's the summer looking like?
No, I'm retired, and I have my year subscription to Flow Racing. So I sit in my lazy boy recliner, and I drink my Diet Coke, and I watch the races from Stafford and criticize everybody and yell at the TV, just like an old man should.
Your time as vice president of Charlotte, did that propel you to want to be the president of Stafford, or was that just another venture in a long journey?
No, being a president was just my dad had retired, and Mark was up there and asked me to come in and help Mark, bring the track forward. So it was really my time as vice president of Charlotte. I was hired by Humpy Wheeler, and unbeknownst to me at the time, they hired me away from Motor Racing Network. And when I went there, I told them, I said, look, my allegiances are with Motor Racing Network. If you're hiring me to grill me or try and pump me, for information, because there had been rumors they wanted to start a radio network. And, no, we want you for, public relations and the marketing. Well, 3 months in, it was evident to me that that's what they were going to do. And I was fortunate enough, after about 7 months, I was up seeing Junior Johnson, who was a dear friend, with his wife Flossie, and I was expressing the concern. I said, I'm going to quit. I said, my word is my bond. I am not going to be part of a rival network. And Junior says, well, just hang in there. I may have something you'd be interested in. A month later, Junior calls me, tells me he hired Darrell Waltrip, and he wants me to come on board to try and corral Waltrip and keep him between the fences in terms of PR and marketing. And so the whole VP title, I was too young and too dumb to know what they wanted to do was start Performance Racing Network.
Talk to us a little bit about the time with DW, because we always like a good DW story.
I don't think we have enough time. You got to remember, at the time, Darrell he'd been winning races with Dygaard, but it became clearly evident that Dygaard wanted to get rid of him because Darrell was making too much money. So they agreed to part ways, and Darrell was going to be a free agent. And the next thing you know, and of all people, Cale Yarborough went to Darrell and said, hey, look, I've got a new deal. I'm going to leave Junior. And so he says, you ought to call him. So he did. And when Dygaard heard about that, they told Darrell Waltrip that he would not drive, but they had him under contract for another year, and that to get out of that contract, Darrell would have to pay Bill and Jim Gardner $300,000. Now, this is in 1980, okay? That's probably closer to maybe $300,000 now. And Junior fronted him $100,000. His father-in-law fronted him another $100,000. And I forget where he got the third $100,000. I just know it wasn't robbing the Franklin National Bank. But he was outspoken. He was young. He sometimes he spoke when he should have shut up. He got himself in trouble. But a fiercer competitor I've never been associated with, a better friend I've never had. And, he went on to win. We won 26 races in 2 years. It was almost half of the races that were run in Winston Cup in 1981 and 1982. It was amazing. And it was a time I'll never forget. And he's still to this day a dear friend. And we used to travel the country because, he had an airplane, but he was too cheap. So we had a big van, and we would drive to the races together. A lot of late nights driving home over the mountains in Bristol, Tennessee, and just sharing stories. But the best one was some guy. We were at the we were at a Kmart signing autographs, and this guy comes up, and you're nothing, you're very bad for racing, just bad mouthing Daryl. And Daryl, you can see the temperature is rising. Okay, the steam starts to come out of the ears, then out of the nostrils. And Daryl stands up, and I'm figuring, oh crap, what am I going to do now? And he challenges the guy to meet him at 11 p.m. in the parking lot, and we can settle this. Okay.
Perfect.
Now,
Perfect.
how do you put that fire out if you're a PR guy?
Jack, now that you're involved in the radio show, you're getting a different feel for it. Do you feel as though the fans are coming back in the racing? Because like I think it's getting more popular, believe it or not, just because you see it more often.
I would agree with you, Paul. I think where we're starting to see, which I think is really heartwarming. When NASCAR decided that they were going to have the 3 tiers, trucks and then Xfinity, they neglected all of their short tracks. Then they started racing on Friday nights. Then they started racing on Saturday nights. And they were taking bread, they were taking food off the table of the short tracks. You had midget racing where all of a sudden some knucklehead figured we needed to spend $50,000 in carbon fiber to be able to race for $1,000 to win. You had IndyCar where they couldn't get out of their own way, fighting and feuding between CART and the IRL. All that is settled down, and we've got a new generation that I think first they get attracted to it by its excitement and flashy cars and all of that. But I think the part that to me makes me excited, Paul, when you and I were growing up, we couldn't wait to turn 16. 16 and one day, and I was at the motor vehicle department.
Right, get a license.
I've got a grandson that didn't get his license until he was 23. Okay?
That's crazy.
There isn't the romance with the passenger car anymore. Isolated areas, yes, but overall, where I think the romance is now is they just like the fast action, the close quarters. They like the accidents, but they also, I think they know the personalities. And if there's one thing that I think we all could do a better job at, me included, is help fans embrace those various personalities. Don't be like, I always criticize IndyCar. Well, they're all a bunch of good guys. No, they're not. Okay? This one doesn't like that one. This one will, put you in the wall. Now you got wild men like Arute, that isn't getting along with somebody else. And you got the same thing over in NASCAR. Now, I'm not advocating what Austin Hill did, but I don't see a hell of a lot wrong with it. Because I know one thing, and you know it too, Paul. You don't need somebody to legislate on your behalf.
Right.
Drivers have the most incredible memories. And when the guy that wronged you least expects it, paybacks are a bitch.
Jack Arute joining us here tonight. Jack, we're up against it with a break, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, people want to see what you're doing with the satellite radio station and all that. You are Jack on Sports on X, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
Always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
You can just if you want to find Brick by Brick, all you have to do is have the SiriusXM app. In the search bar, type in Brick by Brick, and you'll see Tony and my weekly show.
Excellent. Maybe we'll see you roaming around in Loudon next in September as well, possibly.
Hopefully, yeah.
Sounds good. Jack Arute.
Thank
Thank you.